the lane. 15-10. Touchdown, Chargers. What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by Matt Money Smith. And we'll get into offensive coordinator candidates. But, Money, there was some sad news yesterday morning. Jesse Lemonier, former Chargers outside linebacker, passed away at the age of 25. Obviously, our condolences to his family, teammates, especially some of the teammates that he has on this current Chargers team.
Yeah, and it's incredibly sad when someone passes away that young. Child on the way. I mean, just the heartbreaking story. And I think in Jesse's case, this is one of the guys that was, fighting with the Braden Fajokos and these are practice squad guys that get called up one week and back on the practice squad the next and called up the next week, and you're trying to make an impact on special teams and make some plays out there. And it's not easy. It's a tough path to making it in the NFL. And by all accounts, it seemed like even though, he was facing that sort of adversity, not knowing if you were going to be able to have a career in the NFL, and one week you think you are and the next week you're not. And, it's a year to year, it's even less than a year to year and almost a week to week sort of question that you're asking yourself of how am I going to make a living? It seemed like he just had, by all accounts, a real positive attitude and had a very profound impact on that group of guys, specifically when you kind of saw the tributes on social media, the guys that he was, fighting with on that practice squad.
Yeah, incredibly sad and puts a lot in perspective. We talk about wins and losses and leads and blown leads and wins and playoff appearances. This is what really matters. And, I think Braden Fajoko had a nice tribute to him on his Instagram. So, again, just incredibly sad. Our condolences to his family, his loved ones, his teammates. And we'll make that transition to what the lead is, I guess, for the Chargers in terms of news, and that's finding an offensive coordinator. We got some names, Money. We got some interviews that are already in the can. And I figured let's just go through some of these guys. A lot of guys from the Rams, a lot of guys that would have first-year offensive coordinator experience if they came to the Chargers in 2023. And I figured we start with the first name we saw, and that's Zach Robinson, who's 36 years old, a former NFL quarterback, was a Pro Football Focus senior analyst before Sean McVay grabbed him, snatched him up, and brought him to his staff. So, I saw a video of Zach at a press conference, and he literally echoed the same words that Brandon Staley echoed in his press conference: the marriage between the run and the pass. This is the tree that I think Brandon Staley is most comfortable with, and Zach Robinson was first up.
Yeah, I mean, before I start with Zach, I think we should start with the name I mentioned last week and how it's just not obviously. And I didn't think it was going to happen. I figured Frank was going to get a head coaching gig. He's just way too good. And I think it speaks to, just not making a rash decision. And that's exactly what it was in Indianapolis. And we know that Jim Irsay is one of the more quirky owners in the league, but you kind of, I don't know who they're going to hire. I mean, word is that he wants to keep Jeff Saturday. You tell me that
Jeff got a second interview.
Yeah, you tell me you can either have Jeff Saturday or Frank Reich as your head coach, and it's going to take me all of 1/10 of 1 second to tell you which one of those guys I would want. So I knew it was going to be a long shot, and because he's just too good. So the fact that you're not going to be able to get your hands on someone that had called plays previously, that was a head coach previously, that did marry the run and the pass in both Philadelphia and Indianapolis. You now move on to some of these candidates that don't have a lot of experience, that are younger, that you're banking on the coaching tree as much as you are, and you're banking on the person as opposed to kind of the resume. You're just trying to get a feel. And look, calling plays, I think people make a big deal out of it. I'm so happy that Brian Daboll didn't call plays in New York. I think it just goes to show you that, like, this idea of, we gotta find the next Andy Reid, or we've got to find the next Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, these head coaches that are able to call plays. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, there are a lot of benefits to not calling plays as a head coach, to be able, because I think that's what people don't realize is especially offensively, as an offensive coordinator, like you have to be thinking 5-6 plays down the drive. At the very least, you're thinking 2 plays down the drive. So it's very hard to be present in the moment and be a head coach when you're thinking, okay, this was my call. If we get 6 yards, I've got to go to this. If we get 10, I'm going to this. If we get stuffed or take a sack, like that's kind of why. And I'm sorry for that tangent, but I think like that's what's important to remember is that the position is tough, but it's not rocket science. There are great coaches that don't call plays. I think there's a reason why Mike Kafka is going to end up getting a head coaching job. Remember, he got hired as OC by Brian Daboll just to kind of keep that thread going. And here's Daboll, who's called plays for 15 years, at Alabama, helped develop Josh Allen and build that Bills offense into a bit of a juggernaut with him. And he gets to New York, and he's like, no, it's my first time as a head coach. I'm not calling plays. Brings in Kafka, who had never called plays before. And look at that Giants offense. I mean, it was supposed to be one of the worst in the league. They had zero, elite talent at the wide receiver or tight end position, and they end up winning a playoff game and being probably the surprise of the season, save the Seahawks. So I just kind of illustrate that because Kafka had never called plays before, but you were banking on the guy. Here's a former quarterback, a smart guy from Northwestern, a guy that coached under Andy Reid and was able to watch the way that he does it for all those years. And that's what Daboll found. He's like, okay, this is the guy. Even though I've got all this experience calling plays, this is my first head coaching gig, and I'm going to hand this guy the play card, and he's going to do it. So I bring that up because I think that's kind of what the Chargers are probably looking at, is someone that has not called plays before.
But I would say this, too, about Kafka. He catered to his personnel in New York, right? Like they didn't have any wide receivers. They said Daniel Jones can be mobile. He can run the football. Saquon Barkley's our bell cow, and we're going to cater our offense to what we have. They didn't have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and all the guys that Brian Daboll had last year. Daboll took that CEO approach and said, all right, Kafka, you're going to run the offense. Wink, you're going to run the defense, and I'm going to give that input and run the team, right? So I guess in the case of a guy like Zach Robinson, right, if you're around Sean McVay for the last 3 years, or a guy like Thomas Brown, who we'll get to, if you're around Sean McVay for a number of years and you see how he runs an offense and how he calls plays, you can only hope that there are some transferable skills over there. And then first and foremost, I think with Zach Robinson, he's a former NFL quarterback, right? So he knows the position. He played the position. He was drafted to play that position in the NFL. So the importance of that relationship with Justin Herbert, I think, would have to be priority A there.
Yeah, Albert Breer, I know, reported it, and I mean, at this point, and who knows, by the time we post the pod, whether or not it will be decided, it seems like he's the guy. It certainly feels that way. We talked about this last week. He requested Kevin O'Connell when he was hired 2 years ago, denied. Requested Mike McDaniel 2 years ago, denied, and that's how Joe Lombardi got here. So, when you're interviewing 4 guys from the Rams, 2 guys from Kevin O'Connell's staff, it seems to be apparent the direction that he wants to go. And it seems like Zach, of all the names we're going to go through, save Greg Olsen, is the most sort of experienced, seems to fit, like you said, Chris. He's a former quarterback. He's, I do like the parallels between he and Kafka, just because I do think they're similar. It's someone that's been in a spot for a minute, that has worked with quarterbacks, that is a former quarterback, that's watched, one of the best play callers in the league for a few years now, and, just seems like he's ready to get his shot. I mean, like I think about when Shane took over the offense, when Wiz was let go, and just how great, how good it looked. It's like, here's former quarterback, learning under somebody that was pretty darn good at it. Don't forget Ken Whisenhunt went to a Super Bowl, calling plays as a head coach in Arizona. So, I think you saw how great Shane was the second he was given the keys to the car. And obviously, look at what he's doing in Philadelphia now. They're going to probably end up going to a Super Bowl. And what he was able to do with Jalen Hurts. And so, to me, Zach Robinson looks like the guy. I think he's going to probably end up being the one that gets the job, and I'm excited about that. I love the offense. It's hard to argue with the results. Minnesota did not lose that game to the Giants because of offense. They lost because they have no defense, but the offense was moving the ball. They won 12 games this year, so, I got no problem with the style of offense in San Francisco and here in L.A. with the Rams and up in Minnesota. It certainly seems to produce pretty darn good results.
Yeah, just going back to Shane, also just working on the fly with Justin. Remember that week 2 game?
Yeah.
To have Justin play the way that he did that entire rookie season without a preseason. People forget that was the COVID year where there were no preseason games. So for him to go in cold, a guy like Shane is a perfect example of that. And you go through these offenses, right? Gerard Johnson, Kevin O'Connell, Greg Olson. Greg Olson's kind of the outlier here because he's been in the NFL for 20 years, and he's been an offensive coordinator for 6 different teams. He's been with Gruden and McVay for the last 6 years. So, I think he's kind of that steady veteran presence. You probably know what you're going to get there. But I do think that this team wants to make a splash. I think Brandon Staley specifically said that he kind of pointed to himself as like, hey, no one knew about me 3 years ago. And it seemed like, that's the path that he wants to take. A young guy who maybe can breathe a little energy into this offense. I wonder about Justin Herbert, though. It's not so much wondering, but I do think 3 offenses in 4 years, that's a lot for anybody. I think the Matt Canada for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the reason they said they brought him back was because the lights started to come on with that offense latter half of the year, and they kind of got some momentum. So the only thing, if I were to play devil's advocate with some of these guys, is that, hey, it's going to be a little bit of a different offense for Justin Herbert. That probably doesn't matter, because we know how smart Justin is. But it's something to maybe consider that, hey, this is going to be another new system for Justin to learn his 3rd in 4 seasons. Yeah,
and look, there's no way around it. I think it was clear that, they were a little concerned by the production this past season. And I think even at times last season, they did not run the ball well. And, I think for Coach Staley, too, one of the things about that is that and we brought this up, I think, already, but I'll repeat it. It's very hard, it's something DJ said. It's very hard to have a good run defense when you don't have a good run offense because you're not practicing against a really good run offense day in and day out. Mm-hmm. So, you can tie the two together. That either the run defense is prohibiting the run offense from being better, or the run offense is prohibiting the run defense from being better, and somehow they got to get those two things to connect. So I don't think there was any question that, Joe was probably going to be on his way out after another subpar season, from the run offense, and also just sort of the stagnation it felt like from this offense this season. And I think you said it. Justin's plenty smart. You're going to have an entire off season. You're going to have mini camp to do installs. You're going to have, all of those things in June, the 2 weeks in June, and then you're going to have 5 weeks to get comfortable. I don't think it's like college where you're younger, you're not quite mature. You only have X number of hours with these kids every week because of those rules. To me, it's much easier for this to happen in the NFL than it is in college. So, to me, that's not necessarily something I'm too concerned about. And I think that's the other thing, too. Remember, the reason why this job is so attractive is because of the pieces that you have in place. You're an OC that gets to coach and call plays for Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler and Mike Williams, with an offensive line that features Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson and Trey Pipkins and Corey Linsley. You're going to probably put up numbers, and people are going to be looking at you. So it could be a one and done, like Brandon Staley was for Sean McVay, coordinating that defense, and now all of a sudden he's gone and you got to replace him. So I wouldn't be surprised if, something like that, if Zach is super impressive or whomever they hire, we'll get to the other names in a second here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they can get this thing right and it's as good as we think it can be with the right play caller if they don't end up as a head coach, with just a one and done kind of deal. Like Kafka's going to probably end up, or at least has a very good shot of ending up being a head coach after just a single season calling plays.
A guy that I was impressed with even last year, just seeing some of his interviews and what Sean McVay has said about him is Thomas Brown. And
Yeah.
Thomas Brown was a running back in the NFL. He moved from running backs coach to tight ends coach, and he's that guy who I think and I envision as being a head coach in this league in the next 1 to 2 years. He's another interesting name, Money, especially when we talk about the running game and getting the running game going and having your leader connect with the team. And he seems to have the leadership qualities that I think a lot of people want on their staff. So, as much as we talk about Zach Robinson and him being a former quarterback, I think Thomas Brown is an intriguing name. And I actually look at him as more of a head coach type here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's – look, this is fair or not. I mean, you can just – I'll just call it what it is. Like, there aren't a lot of former running backs or running back coaches that are calling plays. There just aren't. They're almost all quarterbacks. Yeah, there's some offensive linemen, but for the most part, they tend to be quarterbacks. If you just go right down the list, man, and Shanahan, McVay, Canada, all these guys are typically former Frank Reich, it's just the way it. For whatever reason, that seems to connect. Mm-hmm. So that would be my one concern. And look, this is, I hate saying it, and I know he's up for, reportedly, D'Amico Ryans, if he gets the job in Denver, wants to take him with him. But, just kind of saw the way Anthony called plays when he was here, when he kind of took that over for a minute and was calling some plays, and the way it went in Detroit when he was the OC there, and ended up losing the play calling from Dan Campbell, Anthony Lynn, our friend. That would make me a little bit nervous. And that's not fair. I know it's totally not fair because, look, the Rams' run offense and Cam Akers was, sent to football Siberia, and they were trying to trade him, and they couldn't, and all of a sudden they give him back the running game, and Cam is great again. So certainly he has that sort of ability to coach it up, and he's, and look, he could be great. For me, fair or not, it would just give me a little bit, I'd be a little bit hesitant. If you ask me, hey, what do you prefer? Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm biased. I prefer a quarterback to be calling plays as an OC. I just feel like that's what we tend to, and whatever. It's, look, Andy Reid wasn't a quarterback, and he's one of the best play callers in the history of the league. I mean, heck, Mike Leach, who helped advance an offense that is, everywhere in college football now. Didn't even freaking play football for the most part. Barely played football. So It can happen. For me, I just, I'm sort of a numbers guy, and I look at the percentages. It's just like, okay, percentages say quarterback's typically the way to go. But again, I think the one thing that Thomas Brown has going for him is the run offense was stagnant. And when he kind of got moved into a different position in that offensive, coaching room by Sean McVay, it seemed to really take off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's, 10 offensive coordinator, maybe 9 offensive coordinator positions open in the NFL right now?
Not to mention the head coaching vacancies, so you've got to remember it's not just the OC, the 10 OCs, but you got 4 head coaching vacancies as well that will need OCs. So, yeah.
I only, we're going off reports and then what the Chargers have said in terms of people who have interviewed and completed their interviews. But anybody else out there, you see a report about Joe Brady, you hear about Kellen Moore and how his status with the Cowboys is in flux. Is there any dark horse candidates you'd be interested in seeing?
Joe Brady's interesting, because of what he did with Joe Burrow at LSU, not what he did in Carolina. There were some rumors coming out of Carolina that he was slow to adjust, that, just kind of came in with the same game plan. I know that was sort of some of the thing, when he got let go by Rule, it was like, wow, that was bad. This is a guy that was, in the conversation as a head coach. When they hired Mike McCarthy, Joe Brady was kind of like the dark horse candidate to be the head coach in Dallas. That's how, how popular he was, how bright his star was, and just kind of that quick ascent after what he was able to do at LSU, breaking every college record, there was on their march to that championship. Obviously, you saw the talent he had on that offense, specifically Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But, and then all of a sudden it just got sideways in a hurry.
Yeah.
So maybe he was able to.
I don't think he had the quarterback to push it down the field in Carolina either, right? Teddy isn't that guy. They had some speed, But it was almost like the opposite of what he had at LSU in terms of Burrow pushing the ball down the field, right?
100%. And again, Matt Rule failed wildly in Carolina. No denying that. So it's kind of hard. That's why if Brady's the guy, I think, yeah, you see what he did at LSU, and a lot of that was just, 5 guys out. And that's what Cincinnati did last week, with their offensive line issues. They just did what Joe did at LSU, and they were like, yeah, ball's going to be out, man. And Joe was so quick. And that's the interesting thing about Joe Brady, right, is one of the things about Burrow is he is such a fast processor. He sees it so quickly before you can get a hand on him. And Justin's the same way. Justin sees it quick. He works those progressions quickly. So that's where I think the Joe Brady, sort of idea comes in and makes sense, because that's what they did at LSU. And man, did it work. Talk about putting up points, man, on some really good teams. So that makes sense. Joe Brady makes sense. I think the Luke Steckel, we'll get to Steckel, but, there's some interesting names.
I got confused when I saw Luke Steckel. I thought Luke Fickell. I was like, Luke Fickell from Cincinnati to Wisconsin to the Chargers. No, Luke Steckel. Okay, Luke Steckel.
Right. Exactly.
Hey,
so to be honest, Chris, look, we don't know a lot about these guys because they haven't called plays.
No,
save Joe Brady.
Complete
and
crap
Joe Brady
shoot.
didn't. Yeah.
Bunny, the common theme, I think, for Sunday, you talk about these 4 teams, they can all run the football. Pacheco in Kansas City, Mixon, the way that they kind of milked the clock in Buffalo after getting up. Philly, obviously, with that 3-headed attack, and Jalen Hurts, and then we've talked about San Francisco the last 2 weeks. The theme, I think, from 2021 to 2022 is we still really didn't identify the second running back. And we talked a little bit about it last week, but the Chargers are going to have to find a running game. And I think that is going to be just as important as getting Justin Herbert going, is having that balanced attack.
And certainly that's going to be a big part of the OC hire, which is where the Thomas Brown thing becomes interesting, right? Is here is someone and look, the thing about the explosive passes and the passing game is it all works off the run. Everything works off the run. So, with McVay and with Shanahan and with Kevin O'Connell, and Dalvin Cook, none of that works until the running game gets going. So that's, I guess that's where you would kind of say, okay, well, we know we can get the passing game going. It's Justin Herbert. We got to figure out how to get designed runs to be more successful. And that's the same thing in Philadelphia. Even though they got 2,700 yards between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, the quietest 2,700. The only thing more quiet than that was Miles Sanders' 1,300 rushing yards. So, yeah, and the reason those were so quiet, and I think he had 11 touchdowns, it's just because Jalen Hurts ran for 813 touchdowns, so I don't think it's necessarily, as we discussed last week, it's not the names. To me, it's the plays. You got the names. You've got it. Austin's, you can lean on Austin. He can be every bit as productive as I believe, as any of those guys, as Miles Sanders, as Dalvin Cook. I think he has the skill set, the strength. I think the one difference is he's smaller, so you just don't want him to take too much abuse, which is why it's important to have that second player. But, look, Austin's been – I think you could probably circle Dalvin Cook and say he's probably been out more than Austin has, and taken a beating. So the one great thing about Austin is – he tends to stay out there. You might have a game or two here or there, like every running back, and it happened. It's happened to Miles Sanders. Christian McCaffrey's dealing with something right now going into championship game. So, to me, it's less about finding another back and more about. And look, the OC will tell you that, and that's the thing. The offensive coordinator is going to be able to come in with a new set of eyes and say, "Hey, yeah, I know you really like him, but no, not. Let's And there's guys out there, right? Heck, if you hire Robinson or Brown or Olsen, they let go of Henderson. They were trying to trade Cam Akers. They brought Malcolm Brown back this year. It's funny the way it's, they guys like their guys. It's one of the old adages in the NFL is you could have someone on your roster that was totally unproductive for 2 years, but somebody goes down with an injury, and who pops up on the practice squad? That guy. Just because you're like, yeah, we know this guy, and we're comfortable with him, and we know if we tell him to do this, that he's going to do it, even if he doesn't do it that well. So that's that's one of the more, I think the state of the running game for the Rams could end up producing one of those players as well. You know, it was very interesting that they gave up on Akers so soon, and then obviously you saw him come back with a fury, you know, once he was given another shot. Same thing, like, interesting, they let go of their leading rusher in Henderson. You know, like, he's on the street. It's just kind of odd. These are two guys that were mid-round, you know, high mid-round picks, and now perhaps looking for work.
One of the things I appreciated most about the Eagles season was that week to week they conform to whatever the defense. Like, so when the Titans played the Eagles, and everybody thought that they were just going to try to run the football because they're one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL, they threw it over their heads to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Each week they had a game plan that was designed to maximize their strengths and put a spotlight on the weakness of the defense. And I don't think the Chargers had that last year. It was really just the arm of Justin Herbert. You know, you didn't go into a game and say, you know what, we're going to run the football 30 times because this is the worst rushing defense in the NFL. So I appreciated the way that Steichen and Sirianni put that offense together. It was a Miles Sanders, Boston Scott Gainwell one week, and then it was an A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert week the next. You really didn't know, and it was kind of you cater it to who your opponent is. And I think that's what the offensive coordinator is going to have to do too. There's way too much talent, as you mentioned, on this Chargers team to just know that, all right, these are the plays that we're going to call each and every week. You got to cater it to your opponent.
One of the things also about Philadelphia that cannot be overlooked is just the front, you know, on both sides. I mean, it's the best defensive line in the league, bar none. I mean, you've got, I think, 3 or maybe even 4 guys in double-digit sacks. They nearly broke the record this year for most sacks in a single season. I think the record was like 79, and I think they ended up with like 73 or 4 or something, just some absurd number. Yeah. So you have that, you know, where you're putting pressure and you're creating turnovers and you're getting more opportunities, you know, for your team to go up double digits, you know, a couple scores, and now you can lean on the run, you know, now they have to play catch up and, you know, that sort of thing. So, but the other thing about Philadelphia is the offensive front. They have invested heavily on the offensive line, multiple first-rounders, big paydays for free agents. You know, they have one of the best tackles in the game in Lane Johnson. They have the best center in the game in Jason Kelce. And that's one thing that I feel like, you know, when healthy, what we saw from Trey this year, if he's brought back, what we saw from Jamari Sawyer, I don't think anybody would be disappointed with Zion's, you know, rookie campaign, even though there were some ups and downs. Like, that's the one thing the Chargers have going for them. They're going to have one of the best offensive fronts in the league. You know, if everybody's healthy and you go Slater and either Filer or Sawyer, you know, Lindsley, Johnson, and Pipkins, that's going to be one of the best groups out there. So, or if Filer stays, now to have Jamari as a swing or a sixth offensive, like, you're going to be able to do a lot. And I would assume that's going to be very exciting. And we saw what it looked like last year. We brought this up. You know, when they ran left, they averaged like 5 yards per carry. When they ran right, they averaged like -1, you know, last year. So to be able to balance, and this year, the right side was better, you know, running the football with Trey and Zion. So I think that's something to keep in mind, too, when, you know, this offensive line is healthy. And that, you know, fair or not for Joe, the left side is where he did most of his running last year behind Slater and Filer and Lindsley, and that was gone. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how much better that is just by default because of the front and the talent on the front and how much better they ought to be.
Yeah, and you wonder how the personnel may change based on how they plan to run the football, who they have on the roster now, what changes could be made in free agency, who they target in the draft. So those are all unknowns that we'll obviously know a little bit more about in the next couple of months. Anything else with this OC search? Like you said, Zach Robinson seems to be a guy that is getting some buzz out there in the public. Anybody else or anything else you want to mention with this?
I mean, the one thing I will say is, look, I know they want to be deliberate and take their time, but you said it. There's 10 openings, you know, and look, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I don't know. I just thought once Frank got hired, I think that I was like, okay, maybe they're going to be patient because they want to see all these other vacancies get filled if Frank's still out there, to nab him. Once he got hired, I was like, hey, man, let's go. Let's get your guy before, one of the other 9 openings gets filled.
Are you surprised it's taken this long, Money? It's January 27th. We still have 4 open head coaching vacancies. I don't know. Maybe it's just, like you said, guys like Kafka who just finished their season. Maybe there's some guys who are actually coaching right now that may get jobs.
I think that's look, I know a lot of people have said this. It's so stupid that they don't put a hiring freeze until after the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think, the fact that D'Amico Ryans or Shane Steichen, we've seen it with Bieniemy, like that those guys aren't going to get jobs, or Lou Anarumo, like those guys aren't going to get jobs because their teams are still in it. Like that's just, it's absurd. It's stupid. Why would you not, like, after watching what Sirianni and Shane have done with this offense two years in a row now, after watching what the Bengals defense has looked like 2 years in a row now, it seems weird that you wouldn't wait. And so maybe teams have finally, kind of managed to get smart and say, okay, why do I need to hire someone right now? Unless you fall in love with the candidate. If you are, hey, that's our guy, then hire him. And I think that's probably what happened with Carolina. Is they're like, look, we're not interested in the first time head coach here. We did that with Rule, with the college jump, did not work. We want someone with experience, and Frank's probably going to get an offer if we don't bring him in immediately. And I think that's why that hire happened. And I also, my understanding is they were trying to sell Wilkes on the idea of becoming a real, a very highly paid assistant to continue to coordinate the defense. That it was going to go one way or the other, that if they could convince Frank to be the OC and Wilkes to be the head coach and just pay them both almost, just giant salaries like what Jerry's doing with Dan Quinn in Dallas, that was going to be their approach. And if Frank was probably like, no, I'm good. I'm going to get a head coaching gig, between one of these 4 openings, I'm going to get one of them. So that's why they went that route. So that may be why they did it. But anyway, I'm rambling now. I'd like to see them do that. I'd like to see them hire their OC. I'd like to see them figure it out before the guy that they really want is gone, because there are so many openings. And I assume that Tom and Brandon and John are really good at identifying and hiring. And once they've got this thing figured out, and plus the other thing, Chris, is like, to me, the longer it takes, I'm just not crazy about the look. It suggests that, you weren't really blown away. You weren't really wowed, and now you're just kind of settling. Like, if you are wowed, like, look, that's what happened with Staley. He just blew him away. And they were like, hey, we're not letting this guy get on a plane and go into Florida and interviewing for Philadelphia. We're just going to hire him right now. And that's what happened, because he was scheduled to hop a plane, fly to Florida, meet with Lurie, and they were so impressed that they did not want him to get on that plane. And they made him the offer immediately. So that's the other thing, too, is like, it suggests to me that, maybe none of these candidates has really wowed them, and they're waiting to get that feeling that, oh yeah, here we go. Steckel's the guy. Joe Brady's the guy. Like, I feel it. The second they walked out of the room, hey, don't let them leave the building. Let's figure out what the number is and let's get it put to bed. Yeah, so that's the only thing I'm a little concerned about.
Yeah, the longer it goes, you're right. It's like, okay, well, who else is going to come through the door at that point in February? The guys who are on staff for these championship teams are either going to get head coaching jobs or they're going back to their team. So all the guys that you need to interview are essentially out there to interview. So they say don't flinch on the field. Maybe don't flinch. Get your guy in here and get to work. So I'm very intrigued to see who of the coordinators that are still playing get jobs, because we talk about D'Amico Ryans.
He's going to get a job.
Jonathan Gannon, who it sounds like maybe the Texans.
Which was interesting because I heard Gannon was like on the chopping block. Earlier this season, that they brought Fangio in to be a consultant because they weren't happy with what Gannon was doing and all
then
that sort of stuff.
Sirianni went on a rant defending him last week.
Yeah, because that was out there.
I
remember hearing it like week.
Tough.
Yeah, I was like, I was like, well, I know where he's going to show up. if he gets let go, he's going to be on the plane with us, because I can promise you he's like Brandon's best friend. There was no denying that. But then obviously, turning around and, like I said, like 73 sacks in a season, seems like he's doing a pretty darn good job. But I had heard Shane connected to Carolina, so now that Frank got hired there, I don't know if Shane's going to be able to. And again, I feel like the Eagles are going to win that game. I just think with that defensive front and the ability to match the physicality, of San Francisco, and the ability, because of all that size they have on the interior of that line, that I just feel like they probably haven't, and that could work in against Shane and Gannon for that matter. But I'd be really surprised if D'Amico didn't get one of these gigs. He's so good, and by all accounts, you hear the way players rave about his relationships, his attention to detail. Just kind of has that head coach feel about him. So that would not surprise me at all. Like, from the Eagles, I think Steichen, I would put ahead a little bit of Gannon. I feel like, in terms of getting a gig. I don't know if anyone on the Chiefs staff is going to get it. I think Bieniemy, like, the whole thing with EB is, why doesn't he have a job by now? There's something there. There's got to be something there, and the interview process, it seems weird to me. Like, why would someone have not hired him by now? Nagy got hired, Peterson got hired. I think Kafka's going to end up getting hired. And maybe this is just there's people that reportedly want to interview him to be an OC, and maybe Andy would just let him go and say, yeah, let's get you out of here. Go somewhere where you can call plays, do it for a year, kill it, and then you'll get your head coaching gig. Too many people are scared that you're just working under me and not, calling plays or something. But and then for the Bengals, like I said, Lou would be the one that seemingly, would be the guy that people are going after.
Before we get out of here, your thoughts on Bengals, Chiefs, Chargers? Know these teams very well. The Bengals have I think even over the last few weeks, have turned into this, like, last year kind of like an underdog story to, like, they're almost like the villain now. Like, they're calling Arrowhead Burrowhead. I mean, they got a lot of confidence going into
taking on the personality of their quarterback.
Yeah,
that's Joe Burrow. That's what he does. He's, what's your window? My career. I love him. I loved him in college. I know it's an AFC team, and he's connected to Herbert and all that. Whatever. I love the guy. I freaking love him. He is fun to watch. He's a great quarterback. And I said it. I think we might have talked about it. Look, I was very confident that Bengals team was going to beat the Bills. Very confident. I was confident the 49ers were going to win their game. The Eagles, I wasn't so sure about, and of course, they had the most dominant win of the weekend.
Yeah.
But I think they match up really well. They match up really well with the Chiefs, and there's a reason why he's undefeated against them. The Chiefs' secondary has been an issue all season. Their front is really good. Karlaftis has come on. Frank Clark, we know Chris Jones is, because of the injury to Aaron Donald, Chris Jones has been the best interior lineman in the league. So it's a gnarly front that can get you in a hurry, especially right up the gut with Jones there. So it's not going to be easy, but I look at Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, and then I look at Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, Isaiah Pacheco. Now, granted, Travis Kelce is the best weapon of them all, but if you look at the history of these teams when they meet, they've been able to keep Kelce in check. They're drawing up pretty good plans to say, okay, he's not, like, it's inexplicable that the Jags allowed that guy to catch 14 balls. How does that happen? It's the one thing you can't allow. And I know Andy Reid is so good at scheming it up and finding ways to get him open, but holy cow, that's just crazy. 14 catches for the one guy that they want to go after repeatedly. So, I look at it as, I think Burrow is playing as good as any quarterback in the league right now. They're on a run. They just went into Buffalo and made it look easy. So I feel like they're, and I like their defense better. I like their defense a lot more.
Especially against a Patrick Mahomes who's not going to be 100%. You could analyze his limp on Wednesday. He didn't have one. He's not going to be 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So I like the Bengals and the Eagles as much as I love Christian McCaffrey, having called a bunch of his games in college, and I pull for him. I think he's just so underrated. Even though a lot of people say he's the best running back in the league, he is such a weapon. Love watching Debo and Ayuk and how physical they are. How can you not love George Kittle? And not to mention that defense is every level has incredible playmakers. I think it's 9 interceptions for their safeties, Gibson and Hufanga. We know it's the best linebacking duo, in Greenlaw and Warner. That's not close in the league. And then you got Bosa and Armstead up front. So I think they're going to be good games. I really do. I think they're going to be good games, but I just feel like the ability for Jalen Hurts to run compared to, Brock Purdy and the stress that puts on a defense that's really good, because you've just got to play a little bit more on your heels, knowing that could be coming right at you if you allow them to break contain, and it can go for a long way in touchdowns. I feel like Eagles get the advantage there, and I just feel like with all the skill on offense, as crazy it is to bet against Patrick Mahomes, who's been in 5 straight championship games, which is just nuts. That's what I got. What do you got? I got Eagles, Bengals.
I got Eagles, Bengals too. I think Cincinnati's just too talented. They're playing too locked in right now, and I think the injury to Mahomes, and I could be proven completely wrong, and it's stupid on Monday when the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. But
when it's Chiefs 49ers on Monday.
Exactly. It could be a rematch from a few years ago. Yeah. But I think the Eagles, we talked about the way they conform each and every week. And that San Francisco defense will be the best they play, but they have the weapons to combat anything you throw at them. The receivers are elite. The running game is elite. Jalen Hurts has played at an MVP level. You mentioned the defense, the way the defense is played. And I just feel like for as good as Brock Purdy has been, man, you just wonder, can he go to Philadelphia on the road and win the NFC Championship? Level. It's just it's different. I give him all the credit in the world. I look at the games. They've won 12 straight games, I think, Money. And Purdy's won like 7 or 8 of them. Or is
he
it more
is
than that
8-0.
He's 8-0.
He's 8-0 right now. Yeah, he would be 10-0 if he won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think that's more of a I think Brian Daboll's going to win Coach of the Year, but I think Kyle Shanahan, if he won it, I would not be upset in the least for what he was.
There's
able
a million ways you could go. You could go, starting 0-2 and ended up where they are. Zach Taylor, Pete Carroll with the Seahawks, Brian Daboll. That's why it's so funny. People get so upset when they see the finalists. They're like, "Where's Pete Carroll?" It's like,
where's Kevin O'Connell? Where's Sirianni?
Exactly. It's like, there's a lot of people that are 7. I just want to make sure I got it right. 70 sacks. 70 for the Eagles. Brandon Graham had 11. Josh Sweat had 11. Hassan Reddick had 16. Wow. And Hargrave had 11. To me, that's a lot for Brock Purdy to overcome.
Kaiser and Linval playing in that game too. Two Chargers starters from last year, huh? How
exactly.
About that?
Yeah, exactly. And that, look, you credit Howie. They needed help on the interior. He went out and got Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. That's all. Just going to go grab these 2 guys. Make sure we get a little depth there. And they just bring them in waves. They just roll them through, And that, by the way, is without Jordan Davis, who got hurt. And how big of an impact he was having early in the season. And they're still this good.
Howie has been, save for the Jalen Reagor selection, Howie has been on fire in the draft and the way he's constructed this team, trading Carson Wentz when he had to, drafting Jalen Hurts when everyone thought he was crazy in the second round. I mean, he's done a number of things that have elevated this team in all 3 phases. Nick Sirianni, I don't think a lot of people had him on the head coaching radar. He interviews, he gets it. Bringing in Shane Steichen, a guy who we know really well. They've hit all the right notes, and this could be their chance to get back to the Super Bowl. So we'll see. Both games should be fun. We'll start to pick this thing up. Hopefully, we have an offensive coordinator to announce next Thursday, Money.
Yeah, I don't have any question. We will. Maybe we can get them on.
Yeah, hopefully we get them on. We'll get some guests on now. Chargers Weekly doesn't go away, guys. We still do this
every week,
every Thursday. It doesn't matter if it's January, June, or September. So we will see you guys
We're
next
here.
Thursday, Money. I appreciate it, man. Enjoy the games.